the event that happened. I believe it was 2 days ago now, where there was a neo-Nazi demonstration on an overpass in Cincinnati, in which there were the black residents came and confronted the neo-Nazis, and I've seen a lot of people discussing it, with some black folks saying that this is like some CIA stuff where they're trying to rile people up. I personally think, we have a lot of neo-Nazis and a lot of neo-Nazi sentiments here in the U.S. So I think we're just seeing a lot more Nazis demonstrating and trying to see how much they can get away with. But they, of course, got chased off. I just want to get your opinion on it.
Yes, I mean, I saw it. It wasn't that many neo-Nazis, but I did see it. They got chased off. And yes, you're right. They're all around. They're big Trump supporters. And like I said, Donald Trump has removed the stain of shame, from racism. You can be outwardly racist. Under the Democrats, you can be racist, but they like you to be a little bit more covert with it because they're just as racist as the Republicans. They just operate differently. I do think black people need to be very, very sure as to how we move. I could definitely see some sort of a race clash. I think they're trying to engineer that, but I think the migrant situation is what they're going to tackle first, and then they're going to turn themselves on us. So right now you see a lot of white energy going towards getting, the out the country. And then once they're done that, I think then they're going to turn their energy on us. Because, see, here's the thing. Donald Trump got 4 years in office. He can't run again. And so what he has to do is keep white America distracted from the fact that he's not going to deal with their health care. He's not going to deal with their unemployment. He's not going to deal with corporate. He's not going to deal with wealth inequality. So he knows that if he feeds them these little emotional issues like the border crisis and, inefficiency and critical race theory, he knows how to push their heartstrings to get them emotional and riled up, but he's never going to tackle the issues that matters most to white America. Same thing as this. They'll give us a Juneteenth holiday, they'll push the LGBT. But what about wealth inequality? What about police genocide? What about mass incarceration? The job of the president is to distract the people away from issues that really matter and keep them emotionally tied to all this other garbage that doesn't matter. The reason Donald Trump is pushing his government efficiency, because that's going to keep the American people's attention off the fact that he's doing nothing about wealth inequality and nothing about corporate welfare.
If you're a teacher today, or a black teacher today, I don't know, maybe you're a white one, but you're not even allowed to teach any black history. Nothing about black history can you teach in schools today. But I'll bet they'll find a way to teach you about the Holocaust.
Oh, absolutely. They're still going to include that in there. In fact, speaking to that point, you see how Donald Trump, who said he wasn't going to insert America into the political business of other countries, he's already stuck his nose into Israel, and now sticking his nose into South Africa.
Ooh, man, did you see?
Yes, indeed. He told the president of South Africa that the United States is cutting their aid to South Africa because allegedly the South African people, and I believe they have 100% right to do this, are confiscating the lands from the Caucasians, the British, and the Dutch who came there and stole it a couple of centuries ago. So they are taking their reparations and taking their land back. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk, because as you know, Elon Musk was born in South Africa, although he is now an American citizen, they're trying to punish the government for brothers and sisters taking their land back from these thieves. And as you know, with Caucasian consciousness, they believe that any crime they committed, if it happened before a certain time, they can no longer be held responsible for it. So they don't think they can be held accountable for slavery. They don't think they can be held accountable for apartheid. And the interesting thing about apartheid, that didn't fall till 1994.
Yep.
You understand? So you're looking at 04, 14, 24. Apartheid fell 30 years ago. 30 years ago. So this is not an old thing. This is very much current. Apartheid didn't fall until our lifetime, and Donald Trump is cutting the money that America sends to the South African government because brothers and sisters are taking their land back. And I stand with the South African family, the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Swazi, the Khoi, all the great kingdoms of South Africa, and I hope they take all the land back and kick them Caucasians out, because although I was a great fan of young Nelson Mandela, I think the old Nelson Mandela was very much compromised, and I think the main reason why the Afrikaner government allowed him to ascend to the presidency, the reason why they created this false democracy, is to prevent complete revolution.
Yes.
Because the people on the streets, the brothers and sisters on the ground, they wanted revolution. And in order to hold off on the revolution, they gave him Nelson Mandela as president, and they've been suffering ever since. Nothing fell when apartheid fell. The white people still own everything. So South Africa is going to need a revolution. The whole continent is going to need a revolution. And I'm just really hoping that a lot of these young leaders will join forces with our good brother, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, along with the other General Goita and the other brother there in Niger and Mali, with that alliance of the Sahel states, because what they doing is tremendous. They paying off their debt. They taking control of their diamond mines and their gold mines and all of their natural resource mines. In fact, Burkina Faso just announced that they now are able to produce their own electric car. He also has forbidden the judges in the court from wearing those dusty, blonde, British wigs that most African judges are still wearing.
Why? Why they wearing this stuff still?
The blonde wig of the white man in so-called independent countries. So I love what I see in the Sahel, and I'm just hoping that that movement catches fire around the continent.
And what galls me is the audacity for some of them white Afrikaners to say that the government is discriminating against them.
After what you did.
After all that they did. Now they cried about black people discriminating against us.
Look at the hypocrisy. Look at the double standard. It's okay for us to rob you. It's okay for us to kill you, to exploit you, to kick you off your own land. Do this for centuries. But the minute you say, I'm going to take some of my land back, now you're guilty of taking people off the land. What about what you did? It's the same thing when Donald Trump signed the executive order against critical race theory, right? It's okay to teach white kids that black people were monkeys and they lived in jungles and they intellectually inferior and they have no history worth study, but don't you dare teach the black kids that we enslaved them. Don't you dare teach the black kids that that they're responsible for most of our critical inventions. Don't you dare tell the black kids that the civilizations that we built were only carbon copies of civilizations that they built. Don't tell the black kids that Washington, D.C. was a dysfunctional model of Nile Valley civilization. Don't tell them that. So it's that double standard, that white supremacist consciousness, and Donald Trump is leading the way for the resurgence of global white supremacy on a level we haven't seen. The racism never went anywhere, but it became more covert. It's overt again. What Donald Trump has done for white America is he makes it comfortable for you to publicly be racist again. The Democrats don't mind you being racist, but they don't like you to show it because they're a little bit more dependent on the black vote. Republicans are not dependent on the black vote, so they couldn't care less whether or not that you show that you're racist. And what shows, Baba David, how politically uneducated Americans are and American Africans are. The reason Donald Trump is putting so much attention on government efficiency with this Department of Government Efficiency that he put, the reason he's making the American people think he cares about saving America's money, that is a distraction, Baba David, from the fact that he's going to do nothing to hold the corporations responsible. He's going to do nothing to make sure corporations pay the taxes that they should be paying. He's going to do nothing to stop the corporate welfare that the United States government gives to these corporations. This whole government efficiency movement that Donald Trump is a scam. It is a fraud. It is a distraction so Americans won't ask, when are you going to start charging these corporations, your friends in corporate America, when are you going to start charging them the type of taxes that they should be paying instead of passing that bill down to the American people? They're never going to ask that question because he has everybody distracted on government efficiency. Forget about government efficiency. When are you going to start making corporations pay the percentage of taxes that they should be paying?
Well, when you talked about South Africa and America talked about not giving them USAID and not giving them any more aid, I mean, isn't Africa rich enough that they can be sustainable on themselves? Don't they have the resources?
The problem is, Baba David, so much of Africa has been privatized. So, for example, you look at South Africa. South Africa, Nigeria, we know the Congo is the richest piece of land, period. And speaking of the Congo, Elon Musk is such a big hypocrite too, because you know that the materials he uses for his Tesla car,
Yeah.
they're bought from companies that depend on forced child labor in the Congo.
Ooh.
You know that.
No.
And Donald Trump is worried about South Africans taking their land back, not doing anything. Elon Musk or
Wow.
Bill Gates doing business with companies who get their minerals from the Congo as a result of child forced labor.
Wow.
Look at the hypocrisy. But the other thing that I was going to say a minute ago, I forgot my train of thought before.
About South Africa and the aid, and don't they have enough resources
Here's the
to
problem
support themselves?
90% of the resources in South Africa are privatized, and they're privatized by white people. Remember, apartheid changed nothing. Apartheid did not lead to a redistribution of the wealth of South Africa at all. So when you say, why does a country as rich as South Africa need aid from America with all the diamonds and gold they have in South? You know why? Because the government owns nothing. That's why. The South African government has to depend on handouts from white companies because the Caucasians of apartheid still own everything. They own most of the wealth. So South Africa does not, like most African countries, South Africa does not benefit from its own wealth because Nelson Mandela, the ANC, and that whole movement to destroy apartheid never led to a radical redistribution of the resources. That is the problem in South Africa now. That's why South Africa youth has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world because South Africa doesn't own its resources. That's why they have to depend on handouts. It's the same thing for all the African countries.
Many of them.
Why do you have African countries importing stuff that they can make themselves? It's because so much of their resources, so much of their land has been privatized. They're being sucked dry by the Arabs. They've been sucked dry by the Caucasians, and now they're being sucked dry by the Chinese.
So listen, we have a caller on the phone line from Germany. We're going to talk to Rick from Germany. How you doing today, Rick?
Good day, fellas. Not feeling too good, but my question for Dr. Umar is, are the South Africans still saddled with HIV and AIDS and tuberculosis?
I would say that all African people are still saddled with that. So that's still even an issue here in the States. But what happened was with the ascendancy of Barack Obama and his LGBT campaign, they stopped pushing information and statistics about the HIV rate, particularly amongst homosexual males. If you notice, before Barack Obama became president, you always saw information about the threat of AIDS within the gay black male community. You always saw it. It was like, gay black male, 50% of homosexual males will contract HIV, most will die. When Barack Obama became president with that new population control strategy of LGBT to our children, they stopped educating black men about the health risks, to unprotected same-sex relationships. So AIDS is a big problem everywhere. It's just not being pushed because they're pushing the LGBT. And it's going to be hard to push the LGBT on our kids and at the same time tell them that this lifestyle increases the likelihood that you're going to leave this planet a whole lot sooner than you should have.
But even in the LGBTQTASYZ community, they practice racism. You don't see them. You don't see them supporting no black issues, even though they have black gays.
Nothing. And that feminist movement is a joke. You never see these white feminists or brown feminists or yellow feminists. You never see them stand up for black women when they get fired from jobs for their natural hair. You never see them stand up for black women when they're murdered and killed by police or cut up into pieces when they go on dates with these Caucasian males. And for the life of me, I can't believe black women are still going on blind dates with white men. I mean, we are literally out of our minds. We have to be. What is a black woman doing going on a blind date with a non-African man? I mean, they can barely be safe with us.
They're looking for a bag.
The community. Absolutely.
So
it's just ridiculous. And, the heart of this, gentlemen, the heart and soul of this issue, and this is why we need a whole new set of New Year's resolutions, political resolutions and cultural resolutions, New Year resolutions for African people, is we don't want to admit two things to ourselves. We don't want to admit white people are racist, We don't want to admit that, and we don't want to admit we hate ourselves. In order to solve this problem, you have to admit that these two things are 100% true for most African people in America. We hate who we are, and the people we want to be will never accept us. Until we accept those two realities, we change nothing.
Not a thing. It's just each generation just keeps going in circles because you're not going to accomplish anything until you become who you are. That's, first of all, you can't reach your full potential until you fully understand who you are.
Absolutely. And because you're running, the reason we can't do anything in the name of our blackness, we can't do anything in the name of our race, we can't do anything in the name of our community because nobody wants to be a part of it. You see, everybody's running around with all these other titles. You know, I'm just a child of God. I'm not a race. You know, race don't exist. You know, I'm a Cherokee Indian. You know, I'm a Native American. I didn't come from Africa. No, I'm an Asiatic black man. No, I'm from Morocco. You know, all these foolish identities, none of them are true. Roll up your sleeve, take some DNA test, and you'll find out you're African just like everybody else. And it's amazing, Baba David, because every other race has admitted that the first ancestor in their ancestral land was an African. The Chinese geneticists have already concluded the first person in China was an African. The first person in India was an African. The first person in Mexico was an African. This is not even up for debate anymore. It's conclusive. The only people outside of Africa claiming that their ancestry does not go to Africa are the people who look the most like Africans, black folks.
That's amazing.